Russia's economy grew 3.6% in 2025. Let that satisfy your curiosity for exactly 0 seconds, because the real story is so much worse. The West launched the most aggressive sanctions regime in modern history, over 16,500 individual restrictions. They froze $300 billion in Russian central bank assets. They cut major Russian banks from SWIFT. They banned Russian oil imports into Europe. And Russia's economy grew anyway. This isn't a story about sanctions failing. That's the surface. This is a story about what sanctions accidentally built. A parallel financial architecture that is quietly pulling the foundations out from under the US dollar. And almost nobody in mainstream media is connecting these dots. Let me take you back to February 2022. The moment the West froze Russia's sovereign reserves, every non-aligned central banker on the planet had the same thought. If they can do it to Russia, they can do it to us. That single decision, freezing $300 billion, was supposed to be a financial nuclear bomb. Instead, it became a recruitment ad for a new global financial order. Here are the numbers nobody wants to talk about. Since 2022, central banks worldwide have purchased over 2,800 metric tons of gold, the highest sustained buying spree since 1967. China alone added 316 tons to its official reserves between 2023 and early 2026. The share of global reserves held in US dollars dropped from 59% in 2022 to roughly 54.2% by the end of 2025, according to IMF data. That might sound small. It's not. That 4.8 percentage point drop represents approximately $700 billion in reserves that moved away from dollar-denominated assets in just 4 years. Now follow the money. Russia rerouted its oil exports almost entirely to China, India, and Turkey. In 2025, Russia exported approximately 3.5 million barrels per day to China alone, paid in yuan, not dollars. India imported over 1.8 million barrels per day from Russia, settling a growing share in dirhams and rupees through bilateral swap lines. Russia's trade with China hit $240 billion in 2025, up from $190 billion in 2023. Almost none of that touched the dollar system. So who's winning and who's losing? Russian energy companies like Rosneft and Gazpromneft adapted. They're selling at discounts, roughly $8 to $12 below Brent, but they're selling at record volumes. Russia's federal budget revenue from oil and gas hit 11.3 trillion rubles in 2025. Meanwhile, European energy costs remain 40 to 60% higher than pre-2022 levels. German industrial output contracted for the third consecutive year. BASF, the world's largest chemical company, cut 12,000 jobs and shifted investment to China. The sanctions punished Russia's consumers, but enriched Russia's state. And they quietly hollowed out European competitiveness. Here's what the media is missing entirely. In March 2026, the BRICS bloc, now expanded to include Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran, formally began testing mBridge, a central bank digital currency platform designed to settle cross-border trade without SWIFT, without the dollar, and without any Western intermediary. 12 countries are in active pilot programs. The Bank for International Settlements was originally involved but quietly stepped back in late 2025 under U.S. pressure. That tells you everything. When the institution that oversees global central banking cooperation walks away from a project because Washington is nervous, the project is working. And now the wild card that should keep every Western finance minister awake at night. In late 2025, the G7 agreed to use the interest generated from those frozen $300 billion in Russian assets to fund a $50 billion loan to Ukraine. Legally creative, politically popular, financially catastrophic in ways nobody is admitting, because sovereign wealth funds in the Gulf, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, they watched that move and understood the precedent. Your reserves parked in Western institutions can be seized, repurposed, and spent on geopolitical objectives that have nothing to do with you. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund shifted $18 billion in new allocations toward non-dollar assets in 2025. The UAE's ADIA increased gold holdings by an estimated 22%. Singapore's GIC quietly expanded its yuan-denominated bond portfolio. These aren't radical moves, they're rational moves. And collectively, they represent a tectonic shift in where the world's $12 trillion in sovereign wealth chooses to park its money. Let me be blunt about what this really means. The United States didn't just sanction Russia, it demonstrated to 190 other countries exactly how the dollar system can be weaponized. And the rational response, the mathematically inevitable response, is diversification, not abandonment, not collapse. Slow, steady, irreversible diversification. The dollar won't die tomorrow. But the era of unquestioned dollar dominance, where the U.S. could run unlimited deficits because the world had no alternative, that era started ending on the day those reserves were frozen. Russia didn't beat the sanctions, Russia survived the sanctions. And in surviving, it proved to every fence-sitting nation that there is life outside the Western financial system. That proof of concept is worth more than any military victory. It's the most expensive lesson in monetary history, and the West is the one paying tuition. What happens next is the part that should genuinely concern you. By late 2026, Enbridge is projected to process $200 billion in annual cross-border settlements. Russia and Iran are already testing a joint gold-backed trade token. China's cross-border interbank payment system, PSIT, processed $17 trillion in transactions in 2025, up 38% year over year. A parallel system isn't coming. It's here. And every new sanction the West imposes pushes 3 more countries toward it. If this opened your eyes, hit like and subscribe. We follow the money so you don't have to.